Any sculptor that has an appreciation of the materials they're using, like the craft, I like to see a balance of craft and ideas. Growing up around Sydney and sandstone area and the landscape and the coastline and the Blue Mountains, and then as an architecture student, I got to appreciate sandstone buildings, and I did become a stonemason after that. And so just the love of the material in the first place. It's got a really nice warmth about it, and yeah, just the love of the material. I think that people know about stone sculpture. I think it's almost universal, where just about in every culture they realise that something made of stone has a feel of permanency, and it's almost eternal. It's you know, in every culture there's either religious statues made of stone and or wood or bronze, and they're seen as permanent material. Everybody knows their nature, they're reliable, they're going to be there in the future, and so people relate to that as something substantial and stable and permanent. And so yeah, it definitely people definitely have a response to stone. Stonemasonry sort of led me into sculpture because it was too big a leap for me to go into sculpture, being a boy from the western suburbs, and I didn't know any visual artists or let alone sculptors. And so after studying architecture and finding out a bit more about art, it was safer for me to go into a trade like stonemasonry than into sculpture, I think, looking back on it. At the time, I just thought I was making a practical decision, but when I think about it, I probably would have liked to have done fine arts then, but it was too big a jump, and so a trade like stonemasonry seemed more like something I could do, and it seemed more fitting in with you know, where I was coming from at the time. Sandstone is my #1 material, and on the piece that I'm working on, Hoody, it's important that it's stone because it relates to the concept. So the concept is that the sculpture relates to a classical bust, like you see of emperors or queens or kings. And so it needs to be either stone or bronze to make the concept work. Otherwise, if it was plastic or fiberglass or something like that, well then the audience wouldn't relate it to the classical sculpture. So it needs to work in that way to relate it to heroic people. The Hoody piece is, the idea came from, I see young men and boys walking around, I'm a high school teacher, and they have the jacket with the hood on, which is fine, but sometimes it's sort of summer and winter. And I think it's more about disclosing, and I think it's about sometimes saying something about it's an anti-establishment type of gesture, and you know, they also won't make eye contact and have their head down. It's a whole body language thing, and it's sort of like the anti-hero. So you know, looking at the busts of famous people, they're like heroes, even though they might have been murderers and they might have been rapists and they might have been all sorts of people. We see them as heroes in these busts, and their body language is upright, and they're looking out to the world, and they're, you know, usually done in a material like bronze or marble, of course showing high status. So I thought, why not turn all that around and have this person who's trying to be anti-establishment and anti-hero, but make them out like in a classical way, like a heroic style. So I'm playing around with the appropriating that form of the classical bust and then sort of changing the meaning of it. Sometimes my ideas change, and it's a good thing, because often while you're working in the medium, that's when the good things happen, that's when the creative things happen. And you've got to allow that to happen, not resist it, because that's when, especially in sculpture, because the material is so important, each material has its own qualities. A drawing is nothing like a sculpture, whereas if you're a painter, a drawing is a lot more like a painting than a sculpture is like a drawing. So you're changing the media so much from a drawing, so yeah, you might have to let those things happen, and sometimes the ideas change, and you need to go with the quality of the materials, I think, the nature of the materials. The sandstone in the Gosford area, there's several different types, and same with Sydney. And anyone who knows Sydney will know, about, there used to be a quarry at Bondi and Pyrmont and Balmain, and you can still see where the blocks have been quarried. And as the years have gone by, or the centuries gone by, you can't quarry in Sydney anymore, but Gosford still has a big supply of sandstone. Somersby stone is not my favourite stone, and I would have preferred the Wondabyne, which is down by the Hawkesbury River, which is a much denser, finer grade stone. It would have suited what I was doing better, but I got this Somersby stone at the quarry, so I'm persevering with it. But it's just a white stone, so there's no feature, there's no bands of colour in it, which would disturb the whole form of the sculpture. So yeah, I would prefer the Wondabyne stone, but I'm using the Somersby. Sometimes I work on individual pieces where it's just one idea and you just need to just do one work and get that idea out of your head. And other times it's a bigger idea, like a concept, and you need to do a series to investigate that concept fully. And it's just a natural process. It's like a novel. It's like a chapters of a novel. So you've got to develop the story. Each chapter it develops. And so with that series, Cultivators, there's about 20 sculptures in that series, and it's still not finished. There's still other parts there because I'm still developing, the ideas are still developing. So sometimes a series when there's a bigger concept, and sometimes it's just one idea and then that's just one. Well, for a start, I think a sculpture is a real object. It doesn't represent something like a painting does, whereas a painting represents an idea. So a sculpture is there, it's tangible, it's real, it takes up 3D space the same as we do, and you get a 360-degree viewpoint for a start. So I think people can relate to sculpture in different ways, but I think that for me, the fact that it doesn't represent something actually is something.